There's a version of you that would terrify your current self, a Henry who does not flinch, a Henry whose pulse is steady when uncertain futures thunder at the door. But you are not him yet, not because you are incapable, but because fear still believes it has a seat in your mind. That seat was never won through combat. It was granted through vacancy. This is the story of Zanshin, awareness sharp as forged steel, silent as snowfall, a state that buries hesitation without ceremony, a system practiced by warriors who refuse to allow fear the honor of beginning. And this is how the last Ronin destroyed fear before it ever stepped onto the battlefield. Imagine a young man in the United States. Let's call him Henry. He wants discipline, he wants presence, he wants to be unshakable. But Henry lives in an era where silence is rare and distractions are armies, where discomfort is avoided like exile, where inner peace is equated with softness, and softness is praised until it reveals itself as fragility. Henry wants to conquer fear, so he tries to fight it the way the modern world teaches him. He watches motivational speeches, he reads strategy books about confidence, he listens to podcasts about mental toughness, he consumes psychological tips like rations, but never trains them into reflex. When fear rises, Henry rises to meet it. What if I fail? He argues back. What if I'm not ready? He debates with it. What if this is the wrong time? He asks questions instead of unsheathing presence. Henry assumes fear is a rival. Ancient warriors would call that assumption the first mistake. Fear is not a rival. Fear is a symptom. Fighting symptoms makes a man feel heroic, but solving causes makes him efficient. Henry fights because he believes fear deserves the honor of response. And every response feeds it oxygen. Every debate gives it narrative authority. Every emotional swing tells fear, you are worth addressing, negotiating, defeating, entertaining with monologue. But fear thrives in attention, especially the kind that tries to prove itself brave through volume. Henry tries systems that promise quick transformation, morning mantras, positive affirmations, energetic visualization, all built on emotional ignition. But emotion is torch fire, useful for drama, unreliable for war. Motivation is match flame, task duty is bonfire, Zanshin is glacier certainty. Henry has not trained his system. He changes daily like a mind without allegiance, switches methods like a commander switching uniforms, and a uniform changed is a battle lost in advance. Henry thinks mastery is inspirational. The ancients knew it is sensory. Fear lives not in logic alone, but in untrained posture, breathing, and attention span. It lives in the unattended gap between intention and impulse. It lives in the unchallenged moment where the body scans for permission. Zen would say Henry does not lack courage, he lacks stillness. Bushido would say he does not lack intellect, he lacks a forged nervous system. Because the modern man fights fear after it begins. The samurai engineered themselves so fear never begins at all. Out beyond texts and theories, there existed an ancient system, misunderstood often, mocked occasionally, yet feared silently by those who encountered its consequences too late. That system was Zanshin, not awareness as a concept. Awareness as a condition of the nervous system, perpetual, wide, unreactive, held at the edges of perception like a sentry who never sleeps, yet never announces his vigilance. In Bushido, Zanshin was life posture, not mental technique. It meant remaining alert without tensing, aware without narrating, alive without anticipating death emotionally. Zen monks studied it differently, but arrived at the same result. Sit in silence until silence sits in you. Breathe until breathing stops needing instruction. Listen until listening is no longer directional and becomes ambient consciousness. Henry learns that Zanshin was not built to reduce fear. It was built to make fear irrelevant to process. Modern psychology calls it non-reactive attention training. The ability to observe a threat without emotional recruitment, without cortisol claiming administrative authority over thought, without memory replaying worst-case documentaries into the present moment. But psychology only named the mechanism. The ancients weaponized it. The last Ronin lived Zanshin as doctrine, as consequence, as default. because to wander without constant awareness would be to die without dignity. He saw fear not as an emotion, but as an alert system hijacking the body. So he trained a deeper alert system, one that preceded emotion entirely. Zanshin turned awareness into instinct, instinct into presence, presence into inevitability. Modern people thought fear had to be subdued. Samurai thought fear had to be preempted, not by suppression, but by never allowing it the honor of a first sentence. Henry begins to understand, warriors did not learn to endure storms. They trained until the storm was merely weather, not omen. Zanshin wasn't serenity. It was attention dominance, an internal hierarchical coup where attention replaced emotion at the throne, where modern minds panic in anticipation. Zanshin observed before panic arrived, and by observing early enough, ensured it never arrives at all. Henry discovers he was never truly practicing awareness. He was thinking about awareness. The system was not cognitive, it was somatic ignition through repetition, a container for identity, a dojo for cognition itself. When Henry first tries to adopt Zanshin, he meets the battlefield before the battlefield. Modern minds rebel, not because the method is inferior, but because rebellion itself is habitual. Henry starts sitting for awareness practice at dawn, not energetic meditation, but silent sensory alertness. He notices how quickly the mind tries to linearize perception, how impatience seeks narrative, how distraction stalks awareness like an opportunist with quiet footsteps. After 10 seconds of Zanshin posture, the mind wants commentary. After 1 minute of Zanshin breathing, the ego demands rating metrics. After one morning, the psychology of fear arrives disguised as self-improvement logic. Is it working? And by asking, he already lost the point, because Zanshin works without asking if it works. Like gravity works without applause. Like seasons work without evidence presentations. Psychology calls Henry's enemy novelty addiction, the psychological itch that confuses movement for progress and commentary for consciousness. Zen masters called this enemy the separate self, a cognitive hallucination demanding validation to justify existence. Bushido called it the soft mind. Soft not because it lacks potential, but because it has never been compressed by repetition into sensory certainty. Henry feels the rebellion in the body, a twitch toward the phone, a breath that wants emotional story, eyes that want reward horizon, jaw that searches for tension drama. Henry realizes the internal war is not fought between Henry and fear. It is fought between Henry and the Henry who thinks fear deserves rebuttal. But the warrior's secret, you do not fight the rebellion. You train until the rebellion has no position to occupy. You outlast its narrative, not through emotional endurance, but through somatic unemployment. You demote the ego, not by insulting it, but by giving it no job, role where awareness is sovereign. When Henry studies the Ronin's way, he finally meets the brutal law. The one who hesitates is not a man and emotion standing equal. It is emotion seated in an ungoverned mind. Bushido teaches, choose one path entirely, so completely that hesitation cannot breathe due to lack of alternatives. Zen teaches, do not carry 10 philosophies with shallow presence. Carry one awareness without narrator until narrator dissolves. Henry understands why the one path works, not because it is comfortable, but because it removes discussion jurisdiction from the ego entirely. Repetition becomes the law. Awareness becomes territory. Fear becomes border noise that never crosses into identity. Motivation is declarative but temporary. Zanshin is legislative, not inspirational, imperial. Henry stops asking if discipline needs emotional permission. Discipline is no longer a question he begins the day with. It is the air the day begins under. Henry finds the Ronin wasn't brave because he conquered fear. He was brave because he never accessed the timeline where fear begins first. He destroyed the mind that flinches before he hardened the one who observes. So only one path can occupy the nervous system without gaps or elections. That path does not say many things. It repeats one thing until speaking is unnecessary. Henry doesn't need motivation. He needs a path that burns the negotiation center entirely. The world assumes intensity matters. The warrior knows continuity does. Zen says the gap is where weakness infiltrates. Because gaps are invitations for impulse diplomacy. Psychology supports, rehearsing behaviors, daily reinforces neural dominance and breaks emotional sabotage loops. But the samurai poetry says it better. You forge spirit like brushing ink strokes on soaked rice paper. Each stroke reinforces the last. A single drop smudges the month. Henry learns that missing a day is not calendar arithmetic. It is identity erosion math. One gap is harmless. 2 become permission. 3 become identity exile. The Ronin never repeated intensely. He repeated continually. Henry repeats awareness posture every morning. The posture remains wide but not tense, soft but not weak, still but not dormant, unemotional but not numbed. A fortress built not from zeal but attendance. Henry no longer waits for temptation to rise. He solves the future outcome before the weekday arrives. Samurai pre-decided identity before emotion speaks. Henry now applies it modernly. His training kimono is laid out at night. His repetition quotas are non-negotiable contracts. No decisions allowed when the weekday arrives. Weekdays were pre-litigated the night before. Warriors never waited for battlefield sabotage. They starved its possibility through prior identity cementing. Zen and Bushido complete each other. Bushido builds iron hierarchy. Zen strips extra narrative weight entirely. Henry begins to train not because his mind is convinced. He trains because his future self found no alternative Henry to impersonate. Then one morning, the body rises without parliament. The breath begins without narrator. Awareness spreads not as interior emotion, but default atmosphere. He does not excite himself into discipline, he observes into it. He has not conquered 10 philosophies. He has embodied one path. Motivation is phoenix fire. Shugyo is volcanic heat. Zanshin is weather system permanence. Henry is no longer sampling discipline. He is its consequence, not a man negotiating fear. A man leaving none alive to ask. And that is why the last Ronin destroyed fear. Because he never required permission from the mind that feels fear first. If this philosophy resonates with you, subscribe for more lessons from the last Ronin and the path of Japan, rooted in Bushido and Zen.